out if we give them the freedom to do so. I can continue if you'd like.
Mick here. And yeah, so educator. And I think being on the central seat of education system, what are some things you absolutely hate and love about the current education system? Mick.
Thanks. Like everyone else, I'd like to say thanks. I'm honored to be on the panel with great speakers and people who I've known outside of here, who are very passionate about what we're addressing today. What I love about the education system is almost nothing. What I dislike about it is basically everything. It's a factory model that was created over 100 years ago to create really good factory workers, people who can all do the same thing, repetitive task work, based on rote memorization, based on conformity and being able to complete the same tasks in the same way as everyone else. And that world has not existed for a long time. I felt school was pretty irrelevant in my own day. And to have to teach kids today who are living in, the modern the tech revolution, it's disheartening to have to teach them the same things that I learned in the same ways that I learned them, when the world that I grew up in no longer exists. And the world that they're living in requires much more than what we're allowing for them to be able to do. Continuing to teach them outdated skills like gathering information, regurgitating back that information to prove their intelligence and value, and basing everything on grades and standardized tests. There's very little to like about that. There's nothing I like about it, to be honest with you. I do it because that's the system that's in place. I try to make it as enjoyable as I can for the kids and try to teach them more important skills within that, like self-motivation and resilience. I look for opportunities when our work is done to teach them things like visual scripting and game design, things that will actually build the skill sets that they'll need in the world that they live in today. And so I work within the system the way that I have to, and try to infuse it with the things that I know kids need wherever I can. That's about all I can do in the current system as it stands, unfortunately.
Great, Mick. I can totally understand where this is coming from. I have met so many educators, and it's like they are all having this pain that they don't have full autonomy and full rights to do whatever they want. And especially in India, most of the time the educators are spending in admin activities rather than educating. So this is something. But that was really great. And we have now Rahul with us. And the question for Rahul, as a job creator, as an employer, entire education system is dependent on you as you fulfill the ultimate goal of the current perspective of the education, that is livelihood, which is partially true, I think, because the education the meaning of the education is not only the livelihood, which I think that a life is a balance of material, spiritual and emotional aspects, and education should actually touch all these aspects. But currently, how and I'm just going to ask you a very tough question here, is like, how do you see degrees versus skills? Like, current systems focus more on degrees and grades, and like the filter criteria for new hires is always 60% marks, or good performance, and then only you can show your skills or show you who really you are. So I would just love to listen from you.
Sure. Thank you. And like everyone else, well, lovely to be here. This is my first in such a session in sort of self-learning and, maybe homeschooling and other spaces. I've been used to speaking at tech conferences and also. I tend to agree with a couple of speakers earlier, we have a completely factory system. Same lovely way to put it. Same things that I learned in my time, and I have to teach it right now. Yeah, it's horrible, right? Nothing has changed in so many years. My son was telling me he watches a lot of YouTube shorts, and he was telling me this morning while driving to his cricket coaching. He was saying that I saw this video by this American person who was criticizing the education system, and he basically says that why would I have to remember the name of the 13th president of the US when I could simply Google for it? Yeah, so I mean, this is the absurdness. The first time I came across this thought was several years ago when I was listening to Dr. Sugata Mitra of Hole in the Wall. If you know about that project, it's been a terrific project in self-learning by kids, even from underprivileged backgrounds, largely from underprivileged backgrounds.
Yeah.
I have, before I clearly answer your question, I have another small point to make, is about this whole system of axiomatic proofs. For example, Professor C.K. Raju, who's a mathematician in India and one of the smartest minds in the country in his own right, he actually, if I'm recalling from memory, so excuse me if I'm wrong about this, but he talks about the Western way of looking at 1 plus 1. It seems there are 26 pages of proof that somebody had to write to prove 1 plus 1 equals 2 axiomatically or something. The contrast to this is Sulba Shastra, which is basically it's a book of mathematics, but it is meant for carpenters in India. It's part of the literary tradition before, say, 1800s or so, if you like, right? So even until, we've been invaded since 700 AD approximately, and almost for 1,000 years been colonized in some form or the other, and the education system has completely taken a very, very bad hit. But if you look at, I learned, this was a wonderful insight, that Sulba Shastra was actually a book of mathematics for carpenters. So you learned mathematics because you had to do carpentry, because you had to produce things, right? And it wasn't something abstract you learned which you did not know where and why you would apply that knowledge. And there was nothing called axiomatic proofs in all of that, right? So it is like 1 plus 1, what is observable. For example, Professor C.K. Raju gives an example that you could actually prove that water flows from higher space to lower space, or you can actually make it perceptible. You can make the evidence which is available to you in observation. So the whole dependence on proof, if you've seen the movie on Ramanuja, what is it? I forget the name of the movie on Ramanuja.
I think
Infinity. Yeah, something, right? I mean, the whole, he gets visions of solving the most complex mathematical problems, but that is not good enough somehow, right? You have to go through this whole process of actually proving your outcomes. So I believe that this whole system of thinking is what has led to the modern public education system, the breaking down of everything in smaller parts, very Newtonian way of looking at things, if you like, which essentially means break down everything into small parts, not look at the system. I'm not sure I'm answering your question. I'm probably rambling away, but if there are, I do have with Maitri, I disagree with the structure a little bit, but yes, there is value in not having structure, but there is a lot of value in having structure. In fact, so I'm a traditionalist. I'm a little bit like a conservative, if you like, an Indian conservative, Indic conservative, and if you look at the Guru Shishya Parampara, there is always a structure to it. And, so there is structure in learning classical dance or music, or learning the Vedas, or learning Sulba Shastra with a carpenter in apprenticeship and all of that. So, sort of,
Rahul,
that's a
I think
framework of my thinking. I'm going to pause. Sorry.
we'll be coming back, but still question remains that would you prefer degrees or skills? If someone, and I'll
No
come back.
degrees. We don't hire
I'll-
based on degrees at all. We don't hire based on degrees in programming. We hire based on skill, and so no, we don't look
great.
at degrees
And
at all. They're
I have
absolutely useless and
many more
useless for us,
questions to
honestly.
go with that. Okay, so second, now we have another question for the learner here. So Maitreyi, for self-learning, or like when we don't have the system in place or structure in place, most of the time it's been said that what about the discipline and motivation of a learner, when you are in no competition mode, because competition is something which is killing the entire young generation, I think. But sometimes it's good also. Are those needed, discipline and motivation for learning? And if not, how a learner can keep growing by themselves?
I think if you look back into history and from a perspective of evolution, um, as human beings, we've thrived because we've always been curious and we've always been learners. We learned how to use fire, or, how to make tools. And we've created so many amazing things. The technology that we're talking on right now, all of this is because inherently we are all learners. We are all curious, and we want to learn. We want to know more about the world that we live in and about ourselves. I think that's, as humans, that is what drives us, right? And no, I don't think that, there was a lot of discipline or motivation in the very traditional sense that you see now. Back in the day, when we were coming up with all of these amazing inventions. And does discipline and motivation have its place? Yes, if it comes from inside. I think anything that is forced from the outside never sticks. That's why you have kids waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 days a week in India at least, or 5 days a week anywhere else, and sleeping in on the weekends. Where's the discipline then that schools really pride themselves on, right? That we teach our students discipline. We teach them how to be disciplined. But where is this discipline outside of these four walls of school? So yes, discipline and motivation does have its place when it's coming from the inside, from the learner itself, and it's not something that needs to be forced. I think once we all find whatever it is that we're truly passionate about and really want to learn and know about, we're very intrinsically motivated. So yeah, I think that would be my answer.
Great. And we can have a very big debate on that from different perspective. But anyway, so I'm back to Mick now. And oh, sorry, Matt. So what scares parents most, and how and why do they force their expectations? Because in the last question you talked about like the fear and so many other things, so which is making them more like doing over parenting and all those things. But isn't it not the insecurities or fear also, but just ego of parents, and why they are feeling insecure and like in the game of showing off to their friends, to the society, where you know what, like brag about the parenting and brag about everything. So I would just wanted to know more about those lines. You are on mute, Matt, you are on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, certainly sometimes it is driven by the ego of the parent, but in my experience, more often than not, it's driven by a a definition of success that just no longer applies. So if I define success by the thickness of my hair, for example, I'd be doing a lot of things to try to change that, right? And let me remind you, I'm not going to win that game. And so in education, what happens is we define success in these terms that are financial, power, conformity. And once you define that as success, any person that now is being curious is actually a failure. I was just reading something about Richard Branson that was sent to me. He was an absolute failure in the educational system. There are so many examples of failures, quote unquote failures, that then go off and start businesses and are entrepreneurs and do all these things, but they still would be considered a failure in the educational space. If we define success in an educational context, again, it's conformity, grades, standardized tests, entrance into college, that then will define the person's behavior and cause parents to then push and drive their kids to do things that they may not be built to do. That's really, I think, more so than the ego that's working.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and totally agree with what you said, Matt. I don't know. I just hope we can find more parents like you in the system.
Well, you know what? There's an increasing recognition that this definition of success actually doesn't work for the vast majority of kids. And so a lot of parents are saying, well, what's different? What is another way to think about success? And Raul mentioned it, Maitri mentioned it, serendipity, curiosity, passion, exploration. These are completely different definitions that really are exactly the opposite of what a traditional educational experience looks like.
Yeah. And it's totally, I think, the balance between the emotional, spiritual, and material aspect has been lost from the system, and we are not thriving on creating an integrated personality. And I think entire world is running towards money and materialism, and I think that is why we have
yes, so perfectly. The spirit part of learning, the emotional part of learning, the physical part of learning, all of those things are really excluded in a traditional school. So I'll shut up, but this is really where we must go as a society, as a species, or we are going to destroy everything that we have, our planet, ourselves. So this is serious.
It's already, we have seen, for last 2 years, we have seen the path of destruction anyway. Okay, back to Mick now. And so given the full authority, Mick, if there is no policymakers and there is no pressure on all the educators to, do what the system says, how would you design a learning space, like how it would look like for you if you're given the full authority?
Great question, and I would love to be given that chance. I just want to touch on something real quickly about Rahul's son, who I feel for deeply, because kids regularly would ask me when I would teach them certain things like Roman numerals or converting Fahrenheit to Celsius, why do I have to know this? Why do I have to memorize this? And I won't lie to my kids, even if I get in trouble for it. When they ask me why they have to learn Roman numerals, I'd say, in case you want to know which Super Bowl it is or how to tell time on a grandfather clock. They said, do you know Fahrenheit to Celsius? Do you have it memorized? I said, no, I look it up on my phone. And I know that can get me in trouble, but I don't care. I'm not going to lie to kids who are savvy enough to understand that the majority of what we're teaching them does not matter in their world. And the big reason for that is because in our time, kids carrying a supercomputer in their pocket, we did have to accrue information. We'd had to memorize things. We were our own encyclopedia and dictionary. We had to carry our knowledge in our head. That is no longer the case. Kids carry the history of the world's information in their pockets, and yet we're still asking them to memorize things, which computers can do infinitely better, exponentially faster, and we're not shifting away from that. That's really damaging to kids. So if I had my own ability to do this, first of all, self-learning would be a big part of it. And something that's been touched on a bunch of times is structure versus self-learning. Those are not mutually exclusive. There can be structure within chosen learning where kids are self-motivated to learn something, and you create some structure within there for them to have scaffolding up from where they're a beginning learner to where they have employable skills at some point. And I guarantee it wouldn't take them 13 years of general education and 4 to 6 years of college to reach that point. With coding, especially like Rahul's talking about, I know kids that are 14 or 15 years old that should be making more than 100,000 now at companies, and they're self-taught coders. They did not learn it at school. No one showed them in a class. They took the intrinsic motivation, the self-motivation that they had, the resilience that they have, and applied it to something they were interested in, and the results are astounding. So if it was up to me, teachers would become facilitators, mentors, and guides, not the dispensers of knowledge standing in front of the class, bestowing everything they know on the kids to have the kids regurgitate it back to them to prove their value and their worth. There would be several choices of paths that they can take, and you are their guide along that path. They work at their own pace. They choose which things interest them. And this is after you set some foundations. Like, kids need to be able to read. They need to be able to write to express themselves, express their ideas and communicate their ideas. They need basic math skills. Does every kid need to know how to do calculus? No. Or algebra? Absolutely not. Those are proxies for other skills, and I would argue there are better proxies for those skills in modern society. And so a lot of it for me would look like kids choosing, adults facilitating, kids collaborating, working together, and having it be interest-based. And if you have things that you feel like you need to teach them, tie that into their interests. Don't force things upon them, as Maitri was talking about. Allow them to choose. You choose something like game design or anything else. I can teach you why self-motivation is important. You work with another kid. I can teach you why empathy is important. The learning opportunities are there for you if you allow kids to direct you down their own paths and facilitate and mentor and help them grow in those ways. So I would let the kids lead, and we would be there to support them and create structural elements for them to move along those paths in a way that allows them to feel like they are learning and growing constantly. And if they feel like they want to go down another path, that's an option for them. So it would be a lot more student-led and grown-up supported than the other way
Very
around.
nice. I think I can see the entire like four pillars, supporting each other. That would be the way to go. Great, Mick. And we welcome our viewers. Emmeline from USA. We have Deepak Mon from India. Then Rajesh is there, Parvani, and then there are a couple more. But I think I'm just missing all the names because I need to scroll up. But anyway, the question for Rahul is that, and we really need to know the list of skills and aptitudes and qualities which are missing from the current education system, and what are those and why they are must for the livelihood or to lead a happy and successful life. So list of the skills which you think are missing.
Okay, that'll be hard for me to ramble out all the skills, but I was actually just exactly making a note that what we miss is learning by conversations and asking questions. We do not learn life skills without that. So I drive my son to his cricket coaching and back, and I could easily do that with outsource that or whatever. But the reason I choose to continue to do that is because of the just the focused time I would get with him, what he faced on the field, what is he dealing with, having conversations around that where he's sort of self-flagellating himself sometimes, getting into a or not being able to negotiate with the other kids around, or perhaps being just too shy perhaps with his coach. Just any little thing that I would just be around and pick up, and then that becomes a point of our conversation, and that's how he learns. There are tips that I would be able to give him. Then he'd be able to ask me a ton of questions that but what if he says this? These are life skills. They only happen through conversations and only happen through observation of somebody who's willing to be a mentor and a teacher and and a coach, or whatever you may want to call it, or simply a parent, right? But now this is what is missing, and all of this shows up at workplaces. All of this, we we people, do not know how to negotiate with customers, for example, how to handle a difficult conversation. We don't know how to talk about difficult topics with civility. Okay, we are not taught that. We are taught actually to avoid difficult conversations, but it should perhaps be the other way around. These are skills we do not learn, and all of these type of soft skills are actually is what is missing, in our entire system. And this is not only in India. I see this whole thing, this is so pervasive all over the place. There
Very,
is
very rightly.
what is taught is arrogance. What is taught is, oh, if you talk with a certain voice, with a certain tone, and then you'll be all of this is utter nonsense. You don't need all of this. You just need your humanity. You need to be able to talk to people with honesty, a little bit of authenticity, maybe some vulnerability, and just be honest about what you're asking. If you find things unfair, you say so. It is, people convolute so many things in their heads. And I do some ask me anything sessions for my company. We are about 600 people, and so about 15, 20, 30 people show up every time. So just day before or yesterday, I had one session, and this person had so many notions, ideas gathered, thoughts, and is convoluting so many things in his head. And I was like, why would you do that? Just pick up the phone and ask, or say, I'm unhappy. It's that easy. These are not skills that are taught. Now imagine that poor guy is suffering for what? And
Definitely, very, yeah, very rightly said, Rahul. And I think that is the biggest thing, which is understanding ourselves, right? Like my inner self, or like who I am, or how do I interact with the people, or how do I interact with the entire environment around me, or how do I take the challenges, or how do I actually express myself clearly. Those are the very basic skills which is needed for your entire life, be it a
yeah,
work,
yeah,
be it a
not
life.
only in education or life, right? I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah,
Archana, but just in relationships,
yeah,
like,
definitely.
what's the purpose of relationships?
Yeah,
It is to help the other person move forward in what they choose to move forward in.
yeah.
Okay, I mean, do we have an environment in our relationships which are nurturing and supporting like that? I don't think so. I don't see that
No,
around my
I think
families, honestly.
it's all because of the most of the focus we have given on learning ABCD 1 2 3 4, learning math formulas, big math formulas,
I
getting
just heard one
degrees.
of my family members saying that, oh,
The high,
we need marketability in our kids. I was like, man, please kill me. Somebody come and stab me in the back and take me away. I can't deal with this.
yeah, yeah.
Marketability for kids in class 7 and 8. Bloody
I
hell, you know.
so true, and I think I don't know when the education system is going to understand that we don't need big math formulas or big science formulas to mug up and get the 100 marks or like A plus plus grade in the system. But these are the basic things, and like learning how to learn, because I think there are so many things right now available on the job where you can learn whatever is needed, with a lot of support from outside, like from the mentoring, from online resources, from different courses which are going on. So you don't need to. And anyway, whoever, like, we are passing with the high grades, but on the next day if you ask them what was this formula, or like what did you learn, I don't think they can take the exam next day and score the full marks or whatever they got from the previous day. So I don't think. Anyway, the last question is for like everyone of uh, you. So learner, educator, parent, and employer, job creator, whatever. So if we want to design and build and recreate this education system where everyone, like four pillars, are supporting each other, what would it is that you need from uh, other three pillars to make this education system more empowered and supported, and like more learner centric and whatever, which may fulfill everything which is missing from the current system. How these four pillars should come together, and I would like every one of you to add your valuable inputs to there, like how other three pillars can help getting us there. So anyone can start, and we can.
Archana, actually, what you're asking ties in the comments. Amy Lynn or Ami Lynn asked, do
I mean,
you believe we could change the system, or will we need to create alternative systems? I am not I do not believe that the system can or will be changed. Those impediments to change are deeply rooted, well funded, and are not going anywhere. I choose to step outside of that system, and I think that she hits the nail on the head. There need to be strong alternatives available for families who want to homeschool or have self-learners like your family chose. My tree has shown clearly that you can achieve great things and still go on to college and grad school by being a self-learner. And so, I don't think that the system can or will be changed, at least not anytime soon. And we know that it's damaging kids on a daily basis now. And I think that alternative methods of presenting education parents need to be convinced first. Kids need to lead it. And as Rahul was saying, they're already looking at skills versus degrees. They already covet skills over degrees, especially soft. So if you base more of education and being self-directed, project-based, cross-discipline instead of compartmentalized, focus on social, emotional skills, life skill development, mindset development, those skills will transverse whatever technological advances come, right? The jobs available post 2030 don't exist yet. How do you prepare kids for that? You don't teach them specific technology skills. You teach them to think for themselves. You teach them to be self-motivated, resilient. You teach them how to communicate. You teach them to be empathetic and compassionate people and to seek purpose, to find happiness and success versus financial wealth. And that's going to take alternative systems created by people like us and like people that are participating in this. You cannot wait for the system to change. It will not. Systemic change, you can look at race or any other facet of society and see that systemic change is near impossible. But great things can happen when people strive outside of those barriers, which is what they are, to make changes anyways, and then pull people along because what you're offering is better than what's being offered to them right now. So I think learners, they already want these opportunities. As an educator, I just need you to let them to turn them loose. Parents need to be convinced of the value and the end goal. And I think employers as well already understand that skills are the future and not degrees. That's already happening. So it's really just how to create those systems, because there's not a one size fits all. But there are a lot of people out there working towards that. And it's my tree and I have talked about this a lot. It's curating. Rahul's son watches YouTube. Every kid I know learns things from YouTube. Curating the content in the various platforms that are out there in vertical structures where kids can choose different pathways and have a way to go from a beginner to mastery in anything they want to choose to do. To me, that's a path forward that I would support and want to be a part of.
Great.
That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. I'm going to take that same language, Mick, and try to communicate that to the parents I talk to. So, Archana, to answer your question, what I would say would be these four pillars. Mick mentioned it. I believe it to be true that it starts with the parent. If the parent is driving the child towards the old model of education, the child will be powerless to fight against that. So I think it starts with the parent. But I think the next, and this is something I've just kind of come to recently, I think the next kind of ally is the child. When the parent starts asking the child, what do you care about? Much like Rahul was just talking about, what are the things that you want to learn about? Where what are the conversations that that you're having struggles with? When those are the conversations that parents start having, they will start to see that their young person is far more capable. There's a lot more going on here than we ever imagined. Then the parent, what I would argue is that there's this concept called a mission map, where you ask the child, in the next 6 months or next year, depending on the age of the child, what's one thing that you would love to achieve or learn if you knew you could not fail? That's key,
Mm-hmm.
because school tells kids to avoid failure. And we want to have a conversation with kids about what you would do if you knew you could not fail. And then the parents walks alongside, and here's a place where teachers can play a role. If they are teachers like Mick, when they're thinking about being the role of a facilitator, they can walk alongside that child, because the child has identified the thing that they are interested in. Now the teacher walks alongside and supports that learning process. And then the last part is really around the employer. You know, Raul is unusual in the sense that he doesn't care about the credentials, the degrees. Most companies, they look first at the degree, and then much down the list, they look at the human side of the individual. That has to be completely reversed. So I would look to employers to try to follow Raul's leadership, and look for the character qualities, look for the curiosity, look for the kids that have done things rather than just follow the script. So that's how the four pieces work together in my view, and I'm hopeful that we can get there one day.
Great. Great, Matt. Very good. You know, um, great points. Rahul and Maitri, you want to add it? And then we have a rapid fire, and probably I think we might run out of the time, so we might extend it 5 to 10 minutes more, over an hour. But I really didn't want to miss my rapid fire round. So please, if we can be concise, and, Maitri and Rahul, and then ready for the
No,
rapid
please
fire
move
round.
on. I have nothing really to add. Mick and Matt have added, said some wonderful terms that I'm going to take back. Chosen knowledge, I think Matt used a phrase. I think I'm going to take that back. Um, I just think that in our whole education system, apprenticeship is completely gone missing. You learn by kids in our entire Gurukula system, or earlier, or just parent child. If you look at Ayurveda, the biggest Vaidyas in India, for example, they all learn from their fathers. I was at a lecture on Ayurveda. It was very, very interesting to learn that a kid 12 years old knew about over 500 herbs or something, and how they would be able to, in what situations, what herb helps in what disease. Now, the kid was 12. He learned all this from his father because they would go to the forest areas in Uttarakhand together to pick herbs. We've just completely eradicated this whole system and I don't know what this is. Is this not learning? Why is this not education versus going to a classroom and rote learning this herb does this or this herb does that, and then saying, okay, now you're an MD? It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. So that apprenticeship has to be credited a lot more and sort of brought back into mainstream recognition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the time in ancient India, I think all the skills were imparted from the ancestors, and like no one would. So the doctor, or like Ved we used to call in India, his son would be Ved because he has learned so many things, and no one would ask his degree, or like just show where did you go to
Yeah.
learn all this. So I think this is great. Maitri, you wanted to add something? How you want the support from employers, educators, and parents in terms of charting your own learning path?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I agree with what everyone else has said. And I think the most important thing is trust. I think any of the three pillars give as support. I think from parents, just trust enough in your kids and your, that they know what's good for them, and that they'll find their way, and trust enough that they know how to keep themselves safe, and that whatever they're doing, it's going to lead to something. And that trust in their capabilities. I think the same thing with educators also. I work a lot with kids, and I know it's really easy to say and really hard to actually put into effect. But I think trust in your learners. Trust that, again, like, just our kids are way more smarter than we are. There's nothing that we can really teach them that they don't already know, or that they can't already figure out. So I think the most important thing is to just be there for when they do ask for help. Be there to encourage them, be there to limitation and let them fly. And I think, again, um, from employers and job creators, that these kids that are maybe coming to you without degrees have the skills that you need from them. And I think at Sturgeon, Rahul, you're already doing that, where you're not accepting people or with degrees, and looking for skills and things like that. So I think that's really a great start. But yeah, I think, and especially from job creators, I think maybe opportunities, more opportunities to get mentorship from professionals such as yourself. I think all of you here are really great in the fields that you are in, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people, or a lot of learners, to gain a lot of knowledge from y'all. So I think that's the one important thing. Opportunities for mentorships, opportunities for
Did we all lose both Archana and Maitri?
Uh,
Mick, you're on mute, I think.
I think we
I'm
did.
back.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
we
she's
lost
back.
Maitri, and Archana's
Oh, we've
frozen.
got two Archanas now.
Yeah, we have some issues going on with the internet connections, and I'm really
No
sorry
problem.
about that.
No
I
problem.
wasn't, yeah, but
Happens.
yeah, just I'll add her back to the screen. Uh, Great. I think we have many of the viewers here, and they also had some comments and questions. Probably when we are done with the recording, we'll allow 5 minutes to anyone to come up with any questions. But we have Mariam, we have Rakesh, we have Deepak, we had Christine, we had Parvani, we had Naganan, and there are many more. Sorry if I missed anyone here. But anyway, everyone ready for the quiz or exam?
Right.
Anyway, yeah. So Uh, my first question, and probably I think it's common for everyone, so you can also think your answer because we don't have a lot of time. But everyone, just in 3 sentence, what is the one thing you want to start, stop, and grow in the current education system? And I'm sure Mick said current education system is not improving, so there is no point in suggesting anything there. But if anyone still feels they can answer this rapid question, so start immediately, stop, and just very quick, 3 words or 3 sentences at max. Yeah.
Stop everything that's going on in the current traditional education system. Start listening to kids, parents, and educators more, and grow communities of like-minded people who are tired of the status quo and who want better for their kids and for their futures.
Great.
Yeah, I will add stop grades, stop hiring for credentials, and stop ignoring the child's interests. Or maybe I'll rephrase that: start following the child's interests.
Great. Maitri and Rahul, quickly. Or you want to pass?
Yeah, I have nothing left to add. Start asking kids what they are interested in, help them figure out what they're interested in. Yes, completely stop hiring on degrees in the world. It's not relevant anymore. Yeah, that's
Great. Maitri, I think we keep losing her probably. Maitri, you want to start, stop, and grow quickly?
Yes. Stop teaching.
I think internet is again.
Yeah, I think we lost her.
Maitri?
She's the most important person on this call.
Exactly.
Yeah. Maitri, can you repeat that, please? Because we lost you. You, we are not able to hear you. Are you on mute? Hello.
Now she's frozen.
Okay.
So there are some points coming in, right, from Naganand, for example, self-awareness. I
Yeah.
missed that.
Yeah.
Such a
Very
such a
nice. Yeah.
such an important place, such an
Yeah.
important part of. Yeah, and I think that happens
Could
by
we answer a couple of those
conversations.
questions?
Sorry. Yeah,
Sure.
please. Yeah.
Let me go with
I think we're
the
doing that after the
and then we
rapid
can
fire, right?
yeah. So okay, one thing you unlearn, sorry, one thing you unlearned since you started self exploration or you started growing in maturity from the day when you got graduated, like one unlearning which happened in your life.
I've got one. I am an artist. I was forced to stop taking art classes in high school so I could be on the college pathway. But art brings such energy to me, and I didn't realize this until I was in my 40s. So that's what I've unlearned, that art is actually a critical part of who I am.
Yeah. I've unlearned passivity, which school instills in kids from a very young age, which is you will sit here and take the knowledge that we give you and like it. And it teaches you to become a passive learner. When I do give kids opportunities, they often don't know what to do with them because, and I used to get upset. And I'm like, wait, of course it's not your fault. You've been trained to be passive since you were a little kid. And
Quick.
I have learned to actively learn the things that I care about. I taught myself visual scripting and game design as a man in his 40s. Like I didn't know any of this stuff growing up. So I've become an
Great,
active learner rather than a passive learner. And I had to
great,
unlearn that from growing up in the school system that I grew up in, which is the same one we're
great.
teaching in now.
Yeah. Maitreyi, unlearn. Well, we can't hear you, Maitreyi. We are, I
Yeah,
don't
it
know.
doesn't show that she's muted. So I think it's probably just a tech issue. You couldn't hear
Yeah.
me at first either when we were testing things earlier.
You need to come down, Maitreyi, if you are listening to me. Please.
She
Okay.
can hear us.
She should stand right next to you or behind you. And Matt's right. Hearing from the learner is where we all want to be in reacting to what she's telling us we should be doing.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So maybe she can just sit with me here. Anyway, and I can just go on a rapid fire with her once she comes down. Anyway, what are the name 3 life skills which one must have? Just 3 life skills.
I was saying before, I have a core 4 of mindset skills that I think if you have these 4 skills, there's very little that can stop you in life. Self-motivation, resilience, communication skills, and empathy. Self-motivation, you will take on any challenge that's in front of you
Nice.
without
In
being asked to.
words.
Yes,
In words.
resilience.
4.
No,
Yeah.
nothing can stop you when you have failures. Learning how to communicate your ideas and understand those of others, and then empathy, which is the first step that leads to compassion. Being able
Yeah.
to understand what other people are
So-
going through, not just your own experiences, but theirs, leads you to compassionate acts. So my core 4 is self-motivation, resilience, communication,
We
empathy.
need just the name of the skills. But great, Mick. Sorry. Because
I've
we are
got nothing
running out
to
of
add.
time. Yeah.
I have nothing to add. I'm going to go with mix 4.
Okay. Rahul.
Communication skills, what to communicate, how to communicate, self-awareness, and asking questions.
Very nice. 3 life skills.
Okay.
Maitri.
Empathy/compassion, self-awareness, and let's see what else. Communication. Yeah. Thank you.
Another question you left out was like one thing you unlearned.
Yeah, productivity. That's what I have learned. The need to be productive all the time. You don't need to.
Okay. Meaning of happiness and success in just one word, like not like 2 different words. So meaning of happiness for you guys, one word.
Relationships.
Meaning of success. Meaning of happiness, right? And then meaning
Yeah,
of success.
relationships.
Okay.
Oh, success.
Meaning of-
Purpose.
Okay. Mick, Maitreyi, Rahul, who
Yeah,
else?
I agree with Matt. I would just say success equals happiness. Success
Okay.
is being happy. Happiness comes from love and relationships.
Okay. Very smartly, you removed one question from your Maitreyi.
Yeah, I think for me, success means fulfillment, feeling fulfilled in whatever it is that I'm doing, and happiness, love, relationships, community, family.
Just one. Rahul.
Purpose. Yes, creating a purpose. It doesn't matter whether it is meaningful or no, but just creating whatever purpose and sort of chasing it.
Great. Very, very good. So, if you all were to write your autobiography or any book, what would the title be?
I have one. I'm writing it right now. It's called Educating a Parent. It's trying
Okay.
to help a parent under we just talked about.
Great.
My guru talks about, Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev talks about you do the right things and the right things happen to you. So I have a blog which will hopefully one day be turned into a book called Doing the Right Things.
Very nice.
The School of Life.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That would be the title of mine. The School of Life.
Maitri.
Being, I think, being, not doing.
Okay. And I just share mine is being selfish, changing myself, because this is what I'm doing. Okay. The last question, which is common for everyone, is what is one common belief which is practiced in the entire world today, which needs a paradigm mindset shift as per your thoughts?
What's one belief that needs a paradigm shift?
Yeah.
Grades. That grades matter.
Okay. Great.
Standardization.
Mm-hmm.
That everybody should fit into the same category and
Yep.
display their knowledge or skills or talent in the same way.
Okay. Maitreyi.
I think I'm just gonna go with what I answered before. The need to be productive.
Okay.
Productivity.
Rahul.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I have a different way of putting grades or basically being measured on the same things that has
Yes.
to change.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. I would just go with no one is asking me, but I'll just add that the meaning of wealth, like which needs a paradigm mindset shift. Anyway, another question for learner is what is your favorite time pass?
Being in nature, I think, just doing nothing and just sitting, listening to the sounds around me.
Okay. To Matt, one thing your children hates most about your parenting.
Ooh. That I am unlearning all the things we talked about today. That I preach a good game, but I don't necessarily follow it. So if I could do what you guys are describing, my kids would be so happy with that. But unfortunately, I am still operating on my my old way sometimes.
Okay. that's that's good to know. Mick,
Yeah.
so this
I mean, my
yeah,
son is 11 days old, so I
so
don't know if there's
one thing,
anything. Oh,
no, one thing you absolutely hate, but you still you got to do as an educator every day. One thing which you absolutely hate.
um, teaching core academic subjects that are valueless, teaching kids to memorize things on tests and showing that that's their value as their letter grades. I despise all of it and I avoid it the best that I can.
Okay. The most difficult question comes for Rahul, that what happens when you suddenly know that someone you hired lied about their degree, their education background, faked their degree, but they are an excellent performer and a very nice human being? How would you react?
Nothing happens. That's already happened in 5 or 6 cases. These guys are leaders at Srijan. So we make leaders out of them, actually.
Oh, that is that is really very interesting. I was just like,
No, no,
I didn't want
that shows courage and honesty, right? You come up and say, okay, I lied. All right, wonderful. No, doesn't matter. Now take up
But
something bigger.
but the system pushes people to lie. That's the problem with the whole process. Yeah.
yeah. And I think this question came from a very old article I read, that there was a guy who did this exactly, and after 20 years he was like leader in his organization, but then he was so much humiliated because he couldn't get into the system without a degree, and he did, and he proved that he is best, he has all the skills, his performance is great, but then he was sent to jail, and I just started questioning all these things, like for last like 6 7 years, like what are you be doing in the system. Anyway, so now it's a
May
time.
I add one quick
Sure.
point over there? I was listening to Google's CEOs and why they made Sundar Pichai the CEO of Google. Do you know the one thing that they all agreed on? We cannot agree without him in the room.
Mm.
Does his degrees matter?
Yeah.
Do his degrees matter? Whatever he does, right? Yes, it's all important, all of that. But that's the reason he's the CEO. It was
Yeah.
amazing to listen to that point, right?
Great. Thanks. It was so interesting to interact with each one of you, and we got a lot of valuable inputs. And we this was the first episode of Voiced. We definitely are now ready to take any questions. If I can see quickly, if someone writes quickly, we have all four of our panelists here, and we can, Uh, so, okay. Um, I let me just scroll through if I can have any questions here. But
I love that
I,
comment by Amalin.
Yeah, really
I don't
nice
know
comment.
if we have enough time, because it's 8:15 already. So we
Yeah.
are 15 minutes past our show. But definitely these folks will be there to answer any questions we have, and then we'll be coming up with weekly episode of Voiced, bringing these four pillars together in each of them across the globe. And I'm so happy we got a, like amazing response from people across the world, like how much they are looking forward to listen to everyone, like all the four pillars, and they want to become and like voice their views on this platform. So hopefully we can bring all of them like every week. I don't know how long it will go, because uh, education is something which is pissing off, I think, majority of them today, and I don't know how the system, like how the reformation will take place anyway. But I'll go with mix suggestion. And anyway, we have been working on that. We are creating the alternative systems. And one of the system, I just this morning I wrote a post about that, how do we create a system where learner is like he can choose anything he wants to learn from anywhere he wants to learn from anyone he wants to learn. He can apply to any board, any universities. So I don't know how do we decentralize the systems which are tied together, and we can bring the entire ecosystem in a way where we can just make it a learner centric, supported by all these three pillars of the system. So thanks a lot, everyone. Again, I really appreciate your time, and it was so much fun to have all of you. And see you again.
Thank
Good
you
night.
too.
Yeah, have a good
Wonderful.
day. Yeah,
Thank you.
bye. Yeah,
Bye,
thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Prema.
Bye.
Great
Thank you,
meeting you,
everyone.
Rahul.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye,
Nice
Maitri. Bye,
meeting you.
Archana.
Bye.
See you soon,
Bye.
Matt.
Yeah, and I'll share the link soon, because
Oh,
we
yeah.
yeah.